Hi, everybody. This is Steve Maggi from SMA Law Firm. Welcome to another episode of Building the Bridge. And I have the honor of having with me today Tiffany Comprés, who's an international arbitration and litigation attorney based in Miami as well as Paris. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So we have a lot of overlap with this question, and it's the question that I get and you get all the time, but it's super important. What are the factors that businesses need to take into consideration when they're launching a brand new US operation, or they're expanding, which means a startup, or they're expanding their business into the US?
So lots of things to consider, but basically, as you said, I get this question all the time. So I look at their international risk, right? Broadly speaking. So I'll tell clients, look, we need to talk to, a tax person. First of all, international tax, is there a treaty between your country and the United States? How is that going to affect your business? Are you going to be bringing in people working from another country into the United States? Then we need to talk to immigration counsel like yourself. Are you buying and selling products? Are you importing and exporting? Then we need to talk about trade issues. What kind of tariffs might be applied to your goods? Can you get goods to come in from that particular country, that particular good? For example, there was a long time for which there's a fruit called pitaya, and you cannot bring in pitaya from Ecuador for years. So I had clients that wanted to start that business, but then I had to give them the unfortunate news that they needed to bring their pitaya from somewhere else.
Wow.
Then you also have international laws that can apply to import-export, like the UN Convention on Contracts for the International Sale of Goods. So that's a sales law that governs international sales. So if you're importing and exporting, you need to get familiar with that. And then, the other really big ticket item, I would say, that you need to look at, probably first or second order, is if you are dealing with a business that does international work of any kind, whether it's bringing in people from outside to work for you or other kinds of things, you need to look at your dispute resolution provisions in all of your deals. Because if you are doing work with persons or entities, companies that are in a different country, you need to make sure that whatever issues you have, if you need to litigate them, if they rise to that level where you're going to need to actually engage in a formal legal procedure, that you choose the best one for your situation. And that will very likely, but not always, but very likely, be international arbitration. And in order for you to use that dispute resolution method, it has to be written into your contract. It's not something that you can think about later. You've got to think about it from the get-go. And some of these issues, like trade, for example, and duties and things like that. You might launch a business. If you don't think about all of these things in advance, you might launch your business and then midway come into a massive problem. Oh my God, this product carries 135% duties when it's coming from the country of my choice. You don't want to find that out when you're actually importing the product and it's at the port waiting to pass customs.
Wow, there's just so many layers of complexity. The US is infamous worldwide for being litigation crazy and obsessed, and that's because it's very lucrative for some of the parties involved, but it's also very crippling to the businesses. And one thing I love about what you do is that you're dispelling that myth or that image of the American lawyer, because what you're trying to do, if I can sum it up and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is you're trying to help people avoid disputes. And if there are disputes, you're trying to help them resolve them in the cheapest and most efficient way possible, right?
Exactly. And in order for that to happen, right, before they do the deal, we need to talk and make sure that if something happens, their lawyer will have the best tools available at their disposal under the contract to make it as likely to win, as efficient, as inexpensive, as fast as possible.
I tell a lot of prospective clients that are thinking about launching businesses in the US that domestic businesses fail half the time within 5 years. And so if you add that extra layer of the expense and the complexity, especially like you said, if it's about goods and not just services, then and you're talking about treaties and tariffs and all these other issues, it's very difficult to be successful. So you have to do as much prevention and planning as possible, right?
Yes, planning is really key, especially like you said, on this domestic level. You know, you've got OFAC issues, right? You've got money laundering issues. You've got all kinds of things that come into play at the international level that you don't need to consider at the domestic level.
Right.
And so that definitely adds an extra layer that you need to be very careful of, and you need to hire an expert, because most attorneys in the United States, as we know, are not very well versed in international law, right? I mean, you and I went to Georgetown specifically because we wanted to get that international dimension, right? But most attorneys in the US and most law schools don't teach international law regularly. Like, that's not part of your required course load.
Yeah,
So
I always advise people to really ask complex questions to the attorneys that they're, sometimes you're given an attorney name in wherever it is in the US, and that attorney unfortunately might try to steer the case in a certain direction or to take on things that they don't know how to handle. So it's important to also ask really complex questions, because then I think anybody will be able to pick apart whether that attorney really is knowledgeable enough to be able to handle the international aspects and
precisely.
arbitration clauses and things that you handle, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're very unique issues that require expertise. Like, I'm board certified in international law by the Florida Bar. I didn't just sit for that examination out of nowhere. I have to prove that I've been working in this area for, you know, at least a certain number of years, that I've had a certain percentage of my practice focus on this. I had to submit proofs, and I had to submit for an exam for a whole day that was like a bar exam,
Right.
right? So I've covered at least, you know, the I can issue spot for a client what their international risks are going to be. I don't handle immigration, but I can spot an immigration issue and tell you, you need to go talk to somebody else about this that knows about this. I will send them to you, right? An international tax issue. This is something that you need to consider because you're doing XYZ international business.
Right.
This is going to be you know, potentially an issue, but we need to find out, because it could cost you a lot more down the line if we don't deal with it now. So I'll send them to somebody that's a specialist in that area.
So how does somebody who's thinking about doing business, either a startup or expanding their business into the US, how do they get in touch with you to talk about all these different issues and to issue spot and to come up with a strategy?
So they can get in touch with me at my email. I'm very attentive and I answer quickly. Tiffany.compress@fisherbroyles.com.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for all your time, for all you do for these international clients, and for spending time with us today.
Thanks for having me.